Tonight, a shooting outside the Toronto mansion of rap superstar Drake. A security guard seriously injured.
I cannot confirm if Drake was home at the time.
The rap rhetoric released before the crime.
In this beef, Kendrick and Drake are lobbing massive claims.
The frantic calls for help from underneath the rubble of a building collapse in South Africa.
We only see these things happening somewhere else, but now it has happened to us.
Plus, the explicit new details. Stormy Daniels takes a stand at Donald Trump's hush money trial.
They have nothing on books and records.
Also, the soaring toll of text scams targeting Canadians.
Victims lose quite a bit of money to these types of fraud.
And a historic season.
I never thought that I'd get the opportunity to play professional hockey, an hour from where I grew up.
Hockey star Sarah Nurse on the rise of a new league on the eve of the playoffs.
Cutting in front, she scores!
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Mirella Fernandez.
Good evening. A security guard has been shot outside of rap star Drake's Toronto mansion. Music fans can't help but ask if it's connected to a long rap rivalry between the Canadian and American rapper Kendrick Lamar. On the weekend, Lamar released a new song insulting Drake, and the cover art for that song was an aerial shot of Drake's property. Here's CTV's Rahim Ladani.
It's known as the Embassy, but this multi-million-dollar mansion owned by Canadian rapper Drake is now a crime scene after one of his security guards was shot overnight.
He was standing outside of the gates in front of the residence when the shooting occurred.
The male security guard was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Police say as a vehicle drove past the house around 2 o'clock in the morning, at least one person opened fire. The luxurious homes which make up Toronto's Bridle Path neighborhood have many security cameras. Investigators have already looked at footage which they say captures the shooting.
They'll be scouring over the security tape to try and get a license plate and a description of that vehicle. And they'll be hunting down that vehicle as well. It may be stolen, it may not, we don't know.
The motive behind the shooting is a central part of this investigation, which comes in the middle of an ongoing rap feud between Drake and fellow artist Kendrick Lamar.
You make music that electrify 'em. You make music that pacify 'em.
While the rival relationship between the two dates back years, it resurfaced last October, then escalated over the weekend, when both rappers made serious, unsubstantiated claims about the other in their music.
Could've left the kids out of this, don't blame me.
In this beef, Kendrick and Drake are lobbing massive claims of, everything from pedophilia to domestic violence.
While investigators say they are aware of the public dispute, they stopped short of characterizing the shooting as retaliation. Police are not saying if Drake was actually inside the home at the time of the shooting, but investigators have confirmed that they have been in touch with Drake's team and they are cooperating. Rahim Ladani, CTV News, Toronto.
3 men accused of shooting a Sikh leader in British Columbia appeared in court today. They are all Indian nationals who had been living in Edmonton. The federal government has accused New Delhi of orchestrating the plot to kill Hardeep Singh Nijjar. CTV's Andrew Johnson reports.
Stoic solidarity from Sikh supporters of Hardeep Singh Nijjar on the morning his alleged killers are due in court.
The community was waiting for 10 or 11 months for this day. So there's a lot of emotion in the community right now. People wanted to come and just be present.
Inside, the 3 men in their 20s facing first-degree murder and conspiracy charges went before a judge separately via video. 2 of the men scheduled new court dates in 2 weeks. The third still needs to find a lawyer. The brief appearance did not lessen the significance of the day for Nijjar's supporters.
The fact that Canada is now starting to hold these people accountable is it means something to this community, and it's something that the Sikh diaspora around the world is definitely paying attention to.
But accountability for this community means more than a conviction for the 3 Indian nationals arrested Friday in Edmonton.
These 3 basically for us are the tip of the iceberg when it comes to those involved in carrying out the operation. And at the same time, do they have any links to India? Do they have any knowledge of who actually provided this hit, where this money came from?
Before he was shot after evening prayers last June outside his Surrey Gurdwara, Nijjhar played a key role in the Sikh separatist movement. That made him a wanted man in India. The RCMP has confirmed it is investigating whether India played a role in Nijjhar's murder, an allegation the Indian government rejected as absurd when it was raised by Prime Minister Trudeau last year. Since then, the 2 countries have been at odds over Nijjhar's killing. India's envoy to Canada spoke in Montreal today and confirmed the possibility of talks to resolve the dispute. But he also warned Sikh groups in Canada calling for separation from India. They are crossing a, quote, big red line in a matter of national security. Morella.
Andrew Johnson in Surrey, BC. It's been a full day since a 5-story apartment building collapsed in South Africa. Rescuers still trying to find victims. At least 7 people are dead, but more than 40 are still missing. And some of the victims have been using their cell phones to call their loved ones from under the rubble. Rescuers say they can hear people under the debris and are trying to get to them. The building had been under construction, but it's unclear what caused it to crumble. Buildings have been flattened in Rafah, hit by Israeli airstrikes. And today, the military pushed into the southern tip of Gaza, taking control of the border crossing with Egypt. It is raising concerns about the flow of aid. Much of it enters the territory through that border, and millions of Palestinians rely on it. CTV's Michael Couture reports.
Israel's military rolled into Rafah, seizing control of the key border crossing on the southern tip of Gaza. Video obtained by Reuters appears to show tanks bulldozing signs and soldiers raising Israeli flags. Benjamin Netanyahu says taking Rafah serves 2 goals, the return of the hostages and the elimination of Hamas. Gaza field hospitals were once again filled with casualties. Israel's warnings came too late for people to flee. And video of the targeted airstrikes showed massive destruction in residential areas of Rafah. I never saw a war like this one, says this man. Trust me, I wanted to move, I couldn't. Despite the devastation, the United States says the operation in Rafah appears to be limited.
They have said, I think quite clearly, it's no secret that they want to conduct a major military operation there.
The U.S. continues to push for a ceasefire and the release of hostages. Yesterday, Hamas had responded to one proposal, but Israel said it was far from its requirements. Today, Hamas struck a different tone. If Israel continues its military aggression in Rafah, there will be no ceasefire, says the Hamas official. And with Israel controlling the Gaza side of that crucial crossing, there is concern desperately needed humanitarian aid will slow to a trickle or be cut off altogether.
It's hard to see if that closes for an extended period how aid agencies avert famine across the Gaza Strip.
Those calls for calm echoed by the Foreign Affairs Minister.
Canada continues to put pressure on the Israeli officials and government, and also working with our allies.
Delegations representing Israel and Hamas are said to be heading back to Egypt, where there will be negotiations for that elusive ceasefire. Morella.
Mike, thank you for that. Ukraine says it has thwarted a plot by Russia to assassinate its president, Volodymyr Zelensky. And today, Russian President Vladimir Putin was sworn in for a 5th term, giving him another 6 years in power. In a speech to ministers and dignitaries, Putin said he was open to dialogue with the West, which he claims has a, quote, policy of aggression. WNBA star Brittany Griner's new book details her terrifying experience inside a Russian prison and how she has coped since her release. The memoir, titled Coming Home, hit bookshelves today. Griner is using her platform to advocate for the return of other Americans detained overseas. It has been a tell-all kind of day. Donald Trump's hush money trial in New York. The woman who received the payoff to keep the story out of the press took the stand. Stormy Daniels laid out in explicit detail her alleged sexual encounter with the former U.S. president in 2006. CTV's Heather Wright reports.
Today, Donald Trump came face-to-face with the adult film star at the center of his criminal trial. Stormy Daniels took the stand, sharing explicit details about an alleged sexual encounter with Trump that she says left her shaking and bewildered. Daniels testified she was sober when she arrived at Trump's hotel room in 2006, but blacked out after Trump prevented her from leaving the room. "I was staring at the ceiling and didn't know how I got there," she said. "I was trying to think about anything other than what was happening there." Daniels' testimony included so much vivid detail Trump's lawyers called for a mistrial. While the request was denied by the judge, he did call some of the questions unnecessary.
Donald Trump is very stoic. Donald Trump doesn't want to hear this, and we see Donald Trump pushing his lawyers to continue to strenuously object.
During cross-examination, defense attorneys tried to paint Daniels as someone with an axe to grind, who has spent a decade profiting off claims she had sex with the former president. "Am I correct you hate President Trump?" lawyer Susan Neckles asked. Yes, Daniels responded. Seen here leaving the courthouse, Daniels testified for nearly 4 hours today. Testimony Trump called a disaster as he left court.
A very revealing day. As you see, their case is totally falling apart.
Prosecutors say Daniels received $130,000 from Trump and his team in 2016 in exchange for her silence about this alleged affair. The payment was made by Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen. But when Cohen was repaid, prosecutors allege Trump illegally characterized that payment as a legal expense to hide it from voters. Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records. The cross-examination of Stormy Daniels will continue on Thursday. The prosecution is also expected to ask more questions of Daniels once the defense is done. Morella.
Heather Wright, thank you. The Canadian Football League is suspending Toronto Argonauts quarterback Chad Kelly for at least 9 regular season games. The CFL claims his behavior violated its gender-based violence policy. Kelly is accused of making unwanted romantic advances and threatening comments to a female strength and conditioning coach. Kelly will need to be counseled by a gender-based violence expert and have mandatory assessments before he can return to the field. 6 Canadian children have been brought back to this country from a Syrian detention camp. They were stranded there for years in limbo because Ottawa wouldn't repatriate their mother. And in fact, the children have been brought here without her. CTV Geneviève Beauchemin has that story tonight.
After spending years of their short lives at Al Raj detention camp, 2 girls and 4 boys landed in Quebec to be placed together in a family picked by Youth Protection.
They had been in a detention camp with their mother for in excess of 4 years. We've all seen the footage of these camps. Disease, no fresh water, food is at a premium.
The children aged 4 to 11 landed in Canada without their mother. She's a Quebec citizen, but Canada has refused to repatriate her. She, in fact, disappeared from the camp last month.
She's out of the camp. She's trying to get to a Canadian consulate as soon as she can so that she can get back to Quebec with her 6 kids.
While advocates have pushed Ottawa not to separate families, Global Affairs would only say that the government has taken extraordinary measures to bring the children here, and that the focus is now on ensuring they receive the support and care needed to begin a new life in Canada.
These children have gone through an extremely difficult situation. I've said many times that I was extremely preoccupied by the sake of children.
8 more children are believed to be among the estimated 17 Canadians left in camps now. After the fall of the Islamic State, thousands of foreign nationals in Syria were sent to these camps set up for suspected ISIS members and supporters. Advocates have been asking Ottawa to repatriate the Canadians, especially women and children, and to issue peace bonds or try them here if there's any evidence against them.
This is not a case of anybody who's been convicted of a crime. These are Canadian citizens whose life, liberty, and security are at serious jeopardy.
Canada got the assistance of the U.S. to bring the children out, who left along with American, Dutch, and Finnish nationals. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
The federal government is granting BC's request to once again make drug possession illegal in public places. The province had asked for decriminalization as a way to deal with its overwhelming opioid crisis. But But the pilot project led to people using drugs in all kinds of places like transit and hospitals. Here's CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver.
The use of illicit drugs in public places now recriminalized by Ottawa at the demand of the BC government, a significant reversal 1 year into a 3-year pilot project.
It is a process of learning, taking that learning and adjusting and making sure that we move forward so that we're saving lives.
The use and possession of illicit drugs was decriminalized in British Columbia to help the province deal with high rates of opioid addiction and overdose deaths. The province asked for changes, citing police and public safety concerns with public drug use.
The intention of decriminalization was never about providing space for unfettered public drug use. That was not the intention. The intention was to ensure that people felt that they should not be afraid to reach out for help.
So far in 2024, 572 people in British Columbia have died due to unregulated drugs. 15% of those deaths occurred outside in streets, sidewalks, and parks, while 84% have occurred inside residences, shelters, and supportive housing. Harm reduction advocates say the change puts the lives of the province's most vulnerable at risk.
It's kind of ironic and terrible that they're being pushed more into the shadows with no place to go.
The question of how to deal with addictions in BC has been front and center in the political arena.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
In Ottawa again today, it dominated question period.
Does he believe that people should be allowed to smoke meth or crack in children's soccer fields?
Obviously, no one in this House does. That is why we agreed with the British Columbia government.
But it's these political conversations that advocates say are harmful and set policy back.
This is not something that's just happened overnight. To try and blame and scapegoat decriminalization is just reprehensible.
While drug use in public places is now prohibited, people in British Columbia can still possess small amounts of some illicit drugs, Morella, without fear of arrest.
All right, Annie Bergeron-Oliver in Ottawa. Coming up, the text trap.
A package has been shipped, and then you click on a confirmation number.
How cyber crooks are cashing in. Plus, one-on-one with a Canadian hockey star making history. It seems incessant. Texts from delivery companies when you haven't ordered anything. Messages about your checking account from a bank you don't use. Scammers are constantly trying to reel in Canadians to make money. And as CTV's Sarah Plowman tells us, it is clear they are cashing in.
The senders are strangers, the messages unwanted. Spam that arrives all too often by text.
Probably like once a day, easily.
It's annoying, even if Laura Boyd doesn't fall for the scam.
It could be like something like a package has been shipped, and then you click on a confirmation number, or I've been getting phone calls through WhatsApp.
Data from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre shows the number of reported text scams hasn't increased, but the amount of money Canadians are losing has.
The dollar loss has nearly doubled from 2022 to 2023, largely due to a new variation of a job scam that we're following and crypto investments.
It could look like this, a text seeming to offer a job that eventually may even pay you until you're also asked to pay in to boost your status.
And that's where it kind of turns into a crypto investment scam, because the victim is always asked to put more and more money in, and we're actually seeing victims lose quite a bit of money to these types of fraud.
Analysts say cyber criminals are constantly adapting.
So during tax season, for example, you might see lots of messages from the claiming to be from the CRA about your tax refund, or you owe the government money. Now with unemployment rates rising, we are seeing employment scams.
The association representing telecom says industry is investing in tech to scan and prevent unwanted messages from getting through, but notes it's a quick-moving game.
They'll look and see what measures telecom companies are deploying to help block or filter out these messages, and they will adjust, and then we will adjust.
Those who've received spam by text are encouraged to report it by forwarding that text to 7726 or spam. That will alert your cell phone provider so it can be investigated. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
Very annoying. Straight ahead, the sky's the limit. The fearless women diving and dipping their way into the record books. A series of powerful storms is sweeping through the U.S. Midwest. Some communities are picking up the pieces, others still bracing for impact. In Oklahoma, at least one person has died after tornadoes flattened homes and toppled trees overnight. Several twisters hit Michigan this evening, with one city declaring a rare tornado emergency. Talk about reaching for the sky. Here's a team of 24 in Australia jumping from 4,200 meters before gathering together to create two different formations during a free fall. The women broke two of the country's skydiving records. After the break, prepping for the playoffs. Women's hockey takes center stage in record-breaking style. It's been an amazing inaugural season for the Professional Women's Hockey League. They've been filling seats and scoring points with hockey fans for months. Canadian Sarah Nurse is a big part of that. But her goal isn't based on being successful. It's about opening the door for others. CTV's Sean Leathong reports.
It's the last game of the regular season. Toronto's Sarah Nurse is looking for an opening. She's worked tirelessly on her game. So when she finds a lane, the results follow. This goal capping off an incredible run.
Playing with and against the best players in the world is going to make you better.
Toronto takes all.
The first season of the Professional Women's Hockey League has been a whirlwind, from the opening puck drop with Billie Jean King on New Year's Day to a world record-setting crowd of over 19,000 at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, only to break that record with 21,000 people attending a game at the Bell Centre in Montreal. Nurse has played in front of big crowds before.
But I'll tell you, this year at Scotiabank Arena and the Bell Centre, it felt different. The energy in the building, the buzz, it felt different.
Sarah Nurse, she scores!
Nurse ended the game in Montreal in overtime, a player seizing the moment they've created.
We have the chance to really change the landscape of women's sports and show off every opportunity we can.
Stomp your feet, start clapping, got a real good feeling, something bad about to happen.
For Nurse, seen here with teammate Olivia Knowles, changing the landscape of women's sports has been a fun ride, attracting a lot of attention for Nurse and her fellow players.
Whether we're home or away, and have fans lined up 3-4 hours before the game to get a photo or an autograph. And I think that's what means the most to us, because people do care.
Having grown up in Hamilton, the 29-year-old has worn the maple leaf for Team Canada since the 2013 Under-18 tournament. She's won Olympic gold and 3 world championships. Nurse comes from a family of athletes with cousins Darnell and Kia playing both in the NHL and WNBA respectively. Nurse watched as her family members turned pro, but
I never thought that I'd get the opportunity to play professional hockey, an hour from where I grew up.
PWHL Toronto finished first overall and are preparing to take on Minnesota in the first round of the playoffs. As a sign of the league's success, the Toronto team is now moving their playoff games from the 2,500-seat Mattamy Centre to the over 8,000 capacity Coca-Cola Coliseum.
Sean Leathong, CTV News, Toronto.
Great to see you. That's a wrap on the day. Thanks for sharing your time with us. Omar's back tomorrow. For all of us here at CTV National News, good night.